Good evening, everybody. I'm Carly Luca. Today I'll be teaching you how to properly carve a pumpkin. And first of all, I wanted to see, show of hands, who knows the difference between a pumpkin and a jack-o'-lantern? Anybody? Okay, well, a pumpkin is just your traditional garden-grown gourd. So this is a plain pumpkin here. And a jack-o'-lantern is going to be our finished product, which is a carved pumpkin. So there's a lot of speculation on the origin of the tradition of carving pumpkins. Most people cite it back to Ireland. Some say that it was when people wanted to keep the spirits out of their home. They would put them out with scary faces on them to scare the spirits away during like high traffic spirit times. Some say the opposite though, that it was to guide spirits along their journey, and that's why they have the light in them to sort of be like a guiding light for spirits that were lost. So, whichever origin story you subscribe to, carving pumpkins is a great family tradition this time of year. For me, my mom taught me how to carve pumpkins at a young age, and I actually have a picture from my first Halloween and the pumpkins that she carved, so I'll pass that around. Can you grab this from me? Thanks. And now it's my turn to show you my family pumpkin carving secrets. So the first step is making sure you're prepared. You want to have newspaper put down so you don't make a big mess. You want to have a paper towel to clean off the pumpkin. And you got to have your gut bucket or bowl. And next you have to cut off the top. It's really important to be careful. This is the most dangerous step. It's the only time I've ever cut myself doing pumpkin carving is when you cut off the top. You want to make sure to cut it at an angle. Otherwise, when the pumpkin gets hot from the candle, the top could fall right inside. You also want to make sure to do it in sort of a shape. You don't want to do just a complete circle because then it's going to be really hard to try to figure out how do I put this top back on when you're done. And I believe that's it about the top. So the next part is the cleaning and the gutting of the pumpkin. So I usually use a wet paper towel and I just wipe the pumpkin down completely, make sure there's no mud, sap, anything that you might get from the pumpkin patch on it. And then pulling all the guts out is kind of the fun, gross part that the kids love. So you're going to just gut your pumpkin and put it in your gut bucket. And if you want, you can take the seeds out separately and bake them. I usually bake mine at 400 degrees for 20 to 30 minutes, and I use lots of garlic to keep the vampires away. So I have these samples. Can you grab these too? You guys can munch on those. When you're gutting the pumpkin, you want to use a really good metal spoon. I keep these metal spoons just for pumpkin gutting. You can get these kinds in the store that are pretty heavy duty that have the scrapes on them. Those are good. And then the store-bought ones from the kits are ones like these. These are okay. You want to use these usually when you're finishing up with the inside, and you want to make sure to scrape the walls really good. That way there's no strings hanging down that would be a fire hazard later on. So you put all your guts in the gut bucket, like I said. You maybe make a snack out of it. And then the most fun part, of course, is selecting a design and putting it on the pumpkin and getting going with the carving. So for me, I usually use Google Image, take some time finding a design I like. I do a skull every year. That's just traditionally what I've been doing. You can find them and you can freehand draw them, or a lot of these store-bought kits, just like this, they come with stencils. It's important that you pick something that's within your skill level. You don't want to pick something that's going to be so complicated that you're not going to enjoy doing it. You want to do something that's going to be simple, it's going to have a clean cut to it when you're done, and it's going to be fun. There's no point in doing this if you're going to be stressed out the whole time. So when you draw the stencil, you're going to draw it with pencil right onto your pumpkin. If you're using a stencil, I believe they have like a dotted line that you can follow. I draw mine by hand though. So you go ahead and draw it with pencil. You don't want to use permanent marker because there's going to be marks, and if you don't cut perfectly, you're going to see them. And then the next step is to use one of these little guys, and they're like little pokey things, and you can poke holes along where you are going to be cutting. It's great, it prepares the pumpkin to be cut, and it also helps you to follow along where you're going to go. The pencil line can be hard to see sometimes. So your next step is actually carving. There's a wide variety of tools you can use. I always buy these store-bought kits, even though they're kind of silly. They're usually pretty cheap. This one was like $5.99 or something. I bought it this year, but you can keep them from past years. The tools are kind of weak, so they do sometimes break if you bend them or whatever too much. But they come in a variety of sizes. And For the bigger pieces, like to use the ones that are a little bit thicker, and then the small ones, the detail parts, you're going to use these, but these ones bend really easily. So I'll go ahead and cut some of this so you guys can see. Sorry, I gotta sort of have it facing towards me to do it, but you want to sort of use them like a saw. And if you have a big piece that you have to cut, you don't have to cut it all at once, because the part that's going to be gone isn't going to be there, obviously. So you can go ahead and cut it in half and take part at a time. Makes it a little easier for you instead of trying to do some huge piece all at once. And when you have the pieces done, you can either push them inside the pumpkin, as long as you remember to pull them back out before you put the candle in there, or you can push them out the front. I think it's easier just to push it in like I did with this piece. So this is a longer side piece here, but I just cut off this small portion so you can see. And as you're working, you can also use a paper towel just to sort of remove this debris so you can see what you're doing. Make sure, again, that it's a clean cut. For some of these smaller pieces, you can actually turn the tool instead of having to cut and saw every single time. So like for these eyes, I'm just going to go ahead and put it right in and then just turn it. That is part of why the tools break so easily, but ultimately it's going to get you the good results that you want. Some people will use negative space. So like for this one, this is the around the skull area and not the skull itself. It's really creative to use the negative space like that and cut that instead of trying to cut out, you know, and you have to be creative when you pumpkin carve like that, because otherwise you're not going to have enough pumpkin left to actually show what you're trying to show. Also, you want to make sure to keep the right areas connected. So like the top of the skull here, I obviously can't cut this or the whole skull is going to be, there's going to be nothing left but a big hole. Same thing at the bottom. So that's something to keep in mind when you're carving. How are the pumpkin seeds? Good? Garlicky? Okay. Have you guys all carved pumpkins before? Yeah? That's awesome. I think that a really cool thing about it is, like I was saying, that you can do it with your kids. You can pass it on throughout, you know, family traditions. And you can also, as an adult, make them pretty scary or get pretty creative with them. I've seen a lot of really cool ones. I saw somebody do a Pac-Man one year. So that's this whole piece cut out. And then I'm just going to make sure I get all the debris off there. And then sometimes there'll be stuff on the inside too that you're going to want to get out of there. And then just making sure that you grab anything that you pushed inside before you're done. So then once you finish, like I said, check and make sure there's nothing left inside. And you can light your candle or light your pumpkin a few different ways. I always use tea candles. I think it's just the easiest. They burn out super quick, so it's not as big of a hazard. You can use the pillar style candle. I feel like that's like the older generation used to always use these, but sometimes they're too long or too short depending on the pumpkin, so they can be kind of difficult. They take longer to burn out. I know Walgreens also has the fake tea candles if you want to put the pumpkin inside. That's a good option. And the shelf life for once they're carved really depends on the weather, the humidity, everything going on. I've seen them last up to a month. Sometimes they only last a week if they're old and they've been sitting on the pumpkin patch all month, so it just depends. And you're going to want to display it somewhere that your neighbors can see it, so either if you're going to keep it inside, put it in a window, or keep it outside on the porch. You're going to want to put it on social media, so make sure you take pictures and show all your friends. And it's a great thing to do at parties too, because everyone can carve, everyone can put their seeds in a bucket, and then you can be baking the seeds while everybody's working. So this is the finished product here. Are there lights that we can hit? I don't see them, but you guys can hopefully see. This is our finished pumpkin, and that's how you carve a pumpkin.